NFL and the NBA and everything, they've raised their nanogram amounts, way up. So the other thing I like to say is that when somebody comes up with a universal impairment, right, test, index scale, that's what we need. I mean, it has nothing to do with drug testing. Listen, because I've been on the third in the past, and I want to give Dr. Frosch his time. He deserves it. Louis, come on up. Thank you for preparing a talk for us today. And Dr. Louis Frosch.
Thank you. So I am very excited about this. This lecture has been a very long time coming. Because
we haven't invited you, or because you've been preparing it for that long?
Because I'm finally ready. I'm a medical marijuana doctor from Tallahassee, and I'm trained in family medicine. Originally, my education started off in nutrition, ended in neuroscience. I studied the aging brain up at Florida State. My personal interest in that had a lot to do with fasting, insulin resistance, and sexual behavior. I went out to Colorado for med school, got into medical marijuana. And that was when, actually med school and the medical marijuana influence changed the way I saw medicine. Came back to Florida, my home state, residency down in St. Pete. And I've been doing medical marijuana since the very beginning. I didn't want to get too into family medicine and start building those relationships, but everybody knows this was really slow going in the beginning. So I've been an urgent care doctor. I took a spot at the VA for a little while. I will never work for the federal government again. Most of my patients I do see through Doc MJ. They have been great to me over the years. And speaking of which, other than getting a paycheck from Doc MJ, I have no conflicts of interest to speak of. I have no connections with any companies. Anybody I mentioned in my lecture, I have no connections whatsoever with them. Let me get this going. So, as the title says, today we're going to talk about hybrids, right? We're going to get away from the old indica sativa night and day approach, and instead of night and day, we're going to talk about how to manipulate these receptors in our body. I have some very lofty goals today. I was just telling Tony, I have a 3-hour lecture that I'm squeezing into 1 hour. I shouldn't have any problem with this because every day I see patients. I have talked to thousands of patients. Sometimes I have to teach it in 3 minutes, and sometimes I actually have 3 hours, and we can hang out and talk. So bear with me. I'm going to walk you through a patient encounter and how I explain this to patients. But my goal is first and foremost, nobody likes going to a conference and then going to work Monday morning and feeling like nothing changed, right? When you walk out of this room today, you will never think of the endocannabinoid system the same again. So for me to help you understand how to use this as a tool like I do, I need to change your perspective on a few things. We're going to talk about medicine in general, right? That one's highlighted because we need to shift our perspective on how we use this as a tool. I am going to completely reintroduce the endocannabinoid system to you in a way that you have probably never seen it before. We're going to talk about the history of the plant. What would a marijuana lecture be without a little history? But we're going to focus on the THC and the types we were using. And the old way is not working. Yes, I'm going to teach you a new way, but I have to show you that the old way is not working, right? We've evolved incredibly over the last 50, 60 years, and the directions have not changed. Third, I just want to overall improve your confidence. You can go out there and just be a better doctor, but in trying to change how we look at medicine, I want you to start thinking about practicing outside of these protocols, right? The theme of this lecture is balance, right? We use hybrids to balance the endocannabinoid system. When you look at the world, life, politics, down to the cellular level, everything is a push and a pull, right? We have these antagonizing systems within our body. Hormones push one way and drop off the other way. I am here to antagonize all of these lectures, all right? And to see get get in the middle here, right? There's so many differing beliefs on cannabis and its safety and efficacy and who's using what and when. We're all on different pages here. So to move forward, we need to start to balance this in our ideas and how we use this. We began ancient China, right? That guy had no ICD-10 codes. He was not billing anybody's insurance. And who have we become? Somebody that I argue has very little understanding of this plant, right? They had no science back then, and they understand how to use this better than we do today. We are trying to cram this into a medical model, right? And if you don't want to do it like we say to do it, then we say you're abusing it, or you're just using it for fun. So I'm trying to shift this into, these two people here are both promoting wellness use, right? Alcohol, opioids, benzos, LSD, you name it, all these things that have been used for a very long time. There are people that use it for wellness purposes, and there are people that use it for abuse. And, well, let's move into patient assessment, right? There are so many different patients out there. And people come in, and I want to give you a quick filter as to how to tease these patients apart, right? And speaking of antagonizing everybody in here in the system, healthcare versus sick care, right? When patients come in, they come in with all their medical records and all their diagnoses, and I stop them at the door, and I say, I've already been through your records. I want to get you qualified today. That's going to be pretty easy. You are not your diagnosis. Just tell me what you want to accomplish with marijuana. What are your goals? And there are people that are in here that want your advice and see this as a medicine, right? They may have a bunch of medicines already on file, and they want to put another one on there. The commercials tell them, go ask your doctor. They're there for you to tell them how to do this the right way. There's another group of people who are there to get their card. They really don't care what you have to say, right? These are the smokers. These are the people that have smoked pot all their lives. These are the people that listen to the safety advice and the limitations that you want to put on their products, and they don't care, right? Half the patients that are sitting in your office looking at you, they're like, how do I get this turd to give me more flour, right? So I'm not going to sit here and waste your time talking about safety. That is an absolute charade, right? We're going to focus on how to use this as a tool, how to use this better. People come in, and if they want this thing to fix them, say good luck. You might cover up some symptoms for a while, but it's not going to change your life, right? I practice medicine based on 3 pillars: diet, exercise, and sleep, right? 25-year-olds come in complaining about anxiety, and you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. Well, buckle up, buttercup. I've got nothing for you. You want to change your life and you want to feel better? Start changing stuff, right? What did you do today to change? What do you do as doctors every day to change how you practice, how to communicate better with your patients, right? Every lecture, oh, we're here for the patients. We're here for the patients. Yet then we flip the page and it's, the lecture that we sat through that he wasn't even here to talk about it. I wish he was here so we could debate. I'm going to antagonize him more than anybody, because I argue that we need less medical control in this. Since the beginning of time, those that try to control this, that's the government, that's you guys that want to tell your patients to use less because I say so. Well, when does somebody's Xanax dose become abuse, right? You pick a number. Yeah, I see people coming in my office that are on 4 or 5 milligrams of Xanax a day, and it was one of us that prescribed it to them. That's abuse on your part. That's abuse on the patient's part. So I don't fit into this medical recreational, right? People are using this for wellness purposes. Let's help them use it better. But you have to ask yourself, what are you showing up to work for? Why'd you become a doctor? I went to the same robot doctor school that you guys went to. We learned diagnoses, and there's got to be a treatment, right? There's got to be something we can do. That's the sick care model, I'm in the healthcare model, and unfortunately, there are only a small percentage of people who can't get that out of their head, and they're showing up to you like they show up to their other doctors waiting to get fixed. I am here for the other 90% of the people who, sorry, you guys aren't convincing them, right? We say, go home and do Indica-at-Night, Sativa-During-the-Day. But all my smokers are like, well, you know, that shit doesn't work, right? I smoke what I want to smoke because it makes me feel better. I do the best I can. Yep, some people are just running away from their problems, and we see that as abuse. We'll help them do it better, and this is how we're going to do it. So I see marijuana as a psychological Swiss Army knife, right? You cannot put it in a box. It's very complex, lots of moving parts. I want to know where to start this conversation. So these two questions about, you know, what are you here for and how much experience do you have, that can speed up the process pretty quickly. But when we talk about experience, right, that's one of the big things that separates us from these patients is experience, you know? Who in this room has the most experience and knows the most about weed? Well, a couple of them left, the Alien Labs guys from California, right? The ones growing it. Tony knows more about than most of you doctors out here. But why aren't we talking about the same things? Most of you are not going to go home and take his lecture and change what you do talking to patients. You don't have time. The patient's already checked out, right? That you're trying to tell them to only use this much weed, and they're like, whatever, doc, I already smoked that much this morning. And I'm trying to go to work. All right, where's my card, right? So wake up. We have been trying to control this, and the harder we push, the more the people pull it out into the open. There are only 2 states left, right? So who's in control of all this? I'm asking you to wake up and be a better doctor, right? The government forces this, puts this in our lap, and if we can't prove that we know how to use this, well, guess what? It's getting drug out into the open anyways, right? It's inevitable. Someday we'll be there. Other countries have fully legalized. They still have medical systems in place. And it doesn't even matter anymore, right? So, but to talk about that experience, right, that's where I usually jump in, and if I ask, do you smoke weed? Do you know how to do this? And people clam up, they don't want to talk, right? They don't trust you. Who are you? You're a doctor, right? So that's where I jump in personally, and I tell a little of my story. So treating you just like I would one of my patients, I'm going to open up and talk to you. Now, I already gave you my medical professional background, but I grew up on the east coast of Florida, the son of a smuggler. My dad was a smuggler down in Miami in the 70s and 80s. I started smoking weed when I was 11 years old. I was growing it, selling it in high school. The whole 9 yards, taking me nowhere in life. I joined the Marines, never looked back. I was an infantry Marine. I was diagnosed with WPW, and I went and had that simple catheter ablation. Yeah, it went south. I died on the table. They did emergency open heart to save me, and I went back to the barracks. I ate those damn pain pills, didn't do my physical therapy, wasted a year of my life. A good friend of mine died of an overdose. I quit. I got out. I went to worked for a land development company, just breaking my back. By 24 years old, I woke up one Sunday morning with cauda-equina syndrome. Couldn't feel my legs. I had poop and pee all over the place. I joke now and say it really scared the shit out of me. I quit drinking. I lost some weight, started getting back into shape, started taking nutrition classes at night. You know, that was my first love, was that nutrition. Kept moving along, right? I went 100 miles an hour in the other direction. Studied the brain at Florida State, went out to Colorado for med school. Everything changed, right? Now, I'm a patient. I smoke weed every day. I can talk to my patients, and I can just see the stress just melt off of people, right? So then I say, well, let me ask you again. Do you smoke weed? Oh, yeah, I smoke weed every day, doc, you know. It just completely opens up. So you ask somebody a question when they walk in your office and let them talk and look them in the face for a minute. And then you can talk the rest of the time, and they'll walk out of there and say you were the best listener they've ever met, right? Share a little bit of your personal information, and they open up. It's called opening Johari window, right? Psychological term. So, and that last question on there, right, if you really need to tease out what somebody's experienced, even if they say, yeah, I do smoke pot, have you ever overdosed? You typically get 2 answers. What? Weed, you can't overdose on weed. Or a sideways look and, yep, and I never want to feel that way again. But it's never going to kill you. There's your safety talk, right? Using this naturally will never kill you. Moving on. So balance, right? We got to get everybody on the same page. So you guys have this medical idea of how you want to use this. The people, the 90% people, they just want their card, right? So we got to get on the same page. Shared experiences. What do we know everybody has, right? Tony said everybody has a different endocannabinoid system. Yeah, all of our receptors and hormones are in slightly different variations as we're born, but everybody has an endocannabinoid system, right? Everybody has access to this plant, or we're working on that, but the plant is what it is, right? These things don't change. Everybody wants that plant. Everybody has the endocannabinoid system, and everybody has a government-mandated ICD-10 code diagnosis that they got to present walking in the door, right? So I felt like I couldn't have a lecture without a differential diagnosis. If that sounds like I'm mocking this system, I am. Now, this isn't the 10 qualifiable conditions. This is just the stuff that we see in the clinic, right? And I just threw this list together, but these are common things we see. And I have this broken down into brain stuff and body stuff, right? List on the right, well, self-explanatory. You can see how that stuff kind of blends into both sides, right? And I know I'm going to make some very broad generalizations here. I'm going to say things today that the science part of your brain's going to be like, that's not completely true. Well, okay, bear with me. I could care less. I have thousands of patients. They understand what I'm talking about. That's the point I'm trying to get across today. So I will walk through this little story that I present to patients, and I'll break it up with delving a little deeper into the science so you can understand where I'm coming from. But yeah, I heard somebody say probation. See that one on the, I put that on the body list because people come in, they have complaint. I'm like, come on, get in here, right? And what are your expectations? I got to get my card because I'm on probation. What'd you do, right? Doctors don't want to talk to people about that. I'm like, what'd you do, right? How'd you get up here? How'd you end up in this situation? Oh, you did 3 years for weed? You did something nonviolent, you went to prison, had violent things done to you, and you don't have a diagnosis, right? At least we got some anxiety or PTSD here. But how does that affect your life, right? Congratulations, you got that diagnosis today. What are your problems? What do you complain about? Why do you go home and smoke weed? Man, I just can't stop thinking. Go to sleep at night, I can't sleep. What are you thinking about? It doesn't matter, right? Whether it's stuff associated with your PTSD, anxiety, depression, there's brain pain, and there's body pain. We hurt, but we lay down at night and we become what we think between our ears, right? Your body pain gets translated up here, and you think your knees hurt? What's worse, rolling around in bed at night, thinking about some traumatic thing that happened to you, or the depression that's just got you on the brink of suicide? Tell me about your knee pain, right? Pain is pain. Our hypothalamus drives our behaviors in life, the 4 Fs, right? This is Neuroscience 101. 4 Fs, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproducing. But, you got that? Just above that, there's another switch that we live by, and it's pain. We are animals, and we are looking for anything but pain, right? We say we're looking for pleasure, but the more you look for pleasure and happiness, the more pain you find. The more you run away from your pain, the worse it gets. We're just trying to exist. So, pain is what we're treating. And there's a body component and a brain component. All right, see where this is going? We got some stuff in the body, and we have some stuff in the brain. Cannabinoid receptors, etc. So, this is how I explain the endocannabinoid system to my patients, right? We are all born with this incredible neural network called the endocannabinoid system. It's present in all animals, except some insects and some protozoa, but it is present in all of us. It actually comes online pretty early. Within a few weeks, before you really have a brain to speak of, we've identified these active endocannabinoid receptors. Within a few weeks, the moment that neural tube fires up, CB1 receptors appear, and everything follows those CB1 receptors, right? Some interesting research going on about that, looking at it's this guidance system in our different embryological states. So in your mind's eye, right, everybody knows what the nervous system looks like, right? And I talk to patients, I say the same thing. You know what the nervous system looks like, right? Everybody's seen a brain and spinal cord get ripped out of somebody's body in a movie. That's your central nervous system. All the wires that run the motor control and all the sensation, well, that's all the body side of your nervous system, all right? The cannabinoid system is a spider web plugged into your entire nervous system. It is not your nervous system, right? Remember, just picture this in your mind's eye. It's a network. That's where this picture comes from. And it covers your entire nervous system. We're having trouble finding any biochemical pathway that the endocannabinoid system doesn't somehow have an influence over, right? But it's, say it again, it is not your nervous system. It's a third-party system, right? There are two major receptor types in this system and two major hormones that run this system. Yeah, I know we've identified others, but there are two major receptors and two major hormones. We're born with those hormones, right? This system's up and running way before you ever come out of that womb, and it runs until the day you die. THC just so happens to fit in this same receptor, right? It doesn't fit like your hormone, it partially fits in that receptor, but it binds with much higher affinity, and it does shock that system, right? That system is not normal, the system doesn't like it, that signal into the system is not normal, and that system doesn't like it. When that system shuts down and shudders and withdraws, that's when you feel high. Keep it as simple as that, right? Now, those two receptors, that's when I jump into, all right, we're going to shift gears and talk a little about marijuana, right, and the types of marijuana that exist. But I'm just going to check this slide. First, we're going to dig a little deeper into the endocannabinoid system, right? So I'm going to stop that story. We're going to talk a little more about this. Why do I call this a third-party spider web plugged into our brain? Like I said, it's present very early, and we know that it behaves like a scaffolding that our brain and nervous system form within. We are very familiar with the G-protein coupled receptor, right? That's the type of receptor this is, so it's very well studied. So as soon as we discovered the endocannabinoid receptor, a lot of things already made sense to us, right? A good mechanic knows how to work on an engine, and therefore he can work on a lot of different vehicles, right? We already knew a lot about this receptor. What it's for, well, we just say it has some magical ability to control our homeostasis. Okay, that's the going theory. That's what this whole system is for. Not very specific, but we know that it is an overall inhibitory system. And, you know, in my undergrad studying the brain, of course they didn't teach me anything about this. I'd read about this on my own. I'd go ask questions. Nobody wanted to talk about it. But this one is obviously inhibitory, and everything else in the body has a push and a pull, right? There are antagonistic systems and agonist systems that bounce back and forth. So I always thought, well, what's pushing against this? We'll talk about that later. Dynamic, on-demand modulation, tolerance. But tolerance in this system is very unique. It can happen very quickly. It can happen over a medium amount of time or a long, prolonged time. Different mechanisms of tolerance exist, which gives us many different ways that we can use cannabis, right? We're actually going to induce some tolerance into certain receptors to make people feel better, but it doesn't function like other tolerance mechanisms, right? Xanax, opioids, you need a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. We assume marijuana works the same way because we just say it's marijuana, you're taking this many milligrams, and of course it's not going to work. Well, I've pored over the research for years, watching, waiting, looking for specifics about, well, when are we going to start talking about indica and sativa, right? What is the difference? The medical side hasn't figured this out yet, right? The people don't care. We all know that you smoke this thing called sativa, you feel one way. You smoke this thing called indica, you feel a completely different way, right? Hybrids, well, hybrids are this vast genetic spectrum of all combinations. So it's an inhibitory system, and there's lots of levels of tolerance. They regulate up and down, right? We always look at it as, well, it just turns down, it just hides. No, the system can modulate itself downward and upwards and get more sensitive. But these are those three mechanisms. I'm not going to go too into that because patients don't care about this stuff, right? Tolerance, but tolerance is variable in the cannabis and with THC and our endocannabinoid receptors. Now, how do I explain to patients that this is not your brain? This is a tough one because neuroscientists can't even figure out what consciousness is. But consciousness, who you are, who we are, our ego, our self, our existential thoughts are all a construct of our brain, right? And it's incredible the discussions that look at the different parts of the brain and this binding theory of there's some kind of neurotransmitter magic that happens between our two hemispheres that makes us feel present, right? How are we different from all other animals? What part of us is different? Our prefrontal cortex, right? It's larger, it's more advanced, and this is what sets us apart from all the other animals, right? The prefrontal cortex is a time machine, right? It allows us to see ourselves in a future as well as a past. Right? This allows us to be empathetic, it allows us to lie to people, it allows us to basically survive better. But we get in our head, right? Anxious people are stuck in that future that doesn't exist. Depressed people are stuck in this past that doesn't exist, right? My last slide, the differential, anxiety and depression had a slash between them. They are one monster with two heads, right? Oh, but medicine wants to splinter that up and treat it. Nope, we're bringing everything back to one, right? Brain pain and body pain. So we are a construct of our brain. Our mind is something we form in here. The endocannabinoid system doesn't really have anything to do with that other than it tones it down and lets it run, right? A little sativa lets that animal brain run. A little indica, your perception of the outside world goes away. All right, that's just a little hint of pushing on these different receptors. That book in the middle is fascinating. The bicameral mind, right, and this is from the early 2000s, he proposes that ancient brains, as early as Greek and Roman times, based on literature and how we talk about how they would write about people and feelings, we were living with this voice in our head. Hey, guess what? Most of the people are living with this voice in their head still, and it's haunting us. And a lot of people in the neuropsych world see this getting worse and worse and worse, like we're going back to a bicameral type mind. If we don't get our faces out of computers and start using our brain, yep, it's going to start reverting back to very simple processes. But this voice in the back of the head still exists today. In those days, they thought it was a God voice, right? This is where we get these ideas of different gods. And hey, one guy puts on a hat and tells everybody that that's me talking in your head. Pretty powerful stuff, right? So I recommend everyone read into this. It's very interesting.
Listen, Gene Jones has made me bicameral. I
Yep.
could listen to you for hours,
Yep.
but 12:15, and that's about 8 minutes. So sorry.
Okay. So, yeah. So, again, 3 minutes, 3 hours. I've squeezed this into very small time frames. This is a slide that I was going to consider leaving out of the whole thing. This slide is an idea that has never been seen before, right? I've been thinking about this since my undergrad. Take a mental pause and decide how deep I want to get into this. But this is the three-brain solution, right? The endocannabinoid system is the inhibitory side. The autonomic system is the excitatory side, and we are the mind and the machine in the middle, right? The gut-brain theory, it's the connection between the parasympathetic system and the endocannabinoid system, right? These are the systems that bring that gut to our brain. Now, you might have to just wait for another lecture or the book to come out on this one, but this is that endocannabinoid system that's not a part of our nervous system, right? It slows us down, but I'm gonna have to just put a earmark on this, and you'll hear about this again someday. Sativa, indica, ruderalis, and hybrids. I'm not gonna waste any time on this. The genetic verdict is in. There is one species. Whether you say it's one species or 3 species, there are 3 types. We use 2 of them, and we have been cutting them into each other since the 70s, 60s and 70s, right? And every hybrid exists somewhere on this genetic spectrum between indica and sativa, right? Indica and sativa were created because humans brought them to opposite ends of the adapted to where they were, right? Simple as that. So are indica and sativa around anymore? No, they don't exist. We live in a hybrid world. It's a massive spectrum of hybrids, and by continuing to tell people to go home and do one hammer at night and one hammer during the day that doesn't even really exist anymore is ignorant, antiquated, and types, because I believe one of those is the cause of the idiot loser stoner problem, right? Google will tell you that marijuana causes lack of REM sleep. Well, what kind of marijuana? Thousands of articles out there, none of them have looked at the different genetic types, right? And yes, they are genetic types. There are genetic types all across this spectrum. Hopefully we will find a way to figure out what terpenes mean. It's this side versus that side. But the burden really lies on the guys growing it. And you can't call people working in the store a bud tender. That's not what we have here, right? In Colorado, you go talk to somebody at that counter, and that's the guy that was in the back growing it, right? That's different. So, yeah, don't go to the dispensary and ask medical opinions. But I also tell my patients, don't go to these other doctors and ask their opinion either, because they don't know what the hell they're doing. I learned this way out in Colorado. I'm 17 years sober from this thing we call indica, right? Hybrids are healthier, and it's the way of the future, right? Someday we'll figure out how to put the terpene profiles together, but all cannabis plants across that spectrum grow all of the terpenes. When you put sativa in the body, no doubt about it, right? It makes your brain feel like it wakes up, and then it comes back online, right? You push indica in the body, or indica-dominant hybrids, and the closer you get to that pure indica, the more indica-like that feeling gets. I tell my patients that indica has a preference for shocking those body receptors, and sativa has a knack for going after those brain receptors, right? When the brain system comes offline, your rabbit brain runs, right? That's where all the weird paranoia stuff comes from. Pre-1970, when all the weed was 1, 2, 3% THC, sativa was definitely a daytime thing, right? It's always been a daytime thing. Indica, if you smoke weed on a regular basis, you could do indica anytime you wanted to, and it was a great way to relax the body, right? And in the early days, it didn't make you feel super checked out. But hey, the 60s brought that good weed coming in from Vietnam, right? Also, European stuff was more indica-based, right? We were a sativa nation up until the 70s. Then the hippie trail and Vietnam vets coming back. We got a little taste of some stronger stuff. Skipping over all that. Yep. So this time period, we saw the advances in medicine, in hemp. It was great. Then the government pushed back, right? The harder everybody pushes against it. There's old Eli Lilly. He had a 150-acre farm in Indiana testing different cannabis strains, right? The getting was good. These aren't the bad guys. The bad guys were the ones that had ulterior motives to push this out of business, right? So 40s to 70s, we were a low THC sativa nation. Vietnam, the hippie trail. People were going over there, finding strains, finding indica strains, and bringing them back to the US. This is when the hybrid game started. And it started getting stronger. This is when the stronger indica and more people using it, more access, people started to really feel that checked out indica feel, and we started saying, yeah, go home and do this at night. Great. But by the end of the 70s, we had the idiot loser stoner problem, right? There's old Rick Steves, another great book over there, especially if you're from Florida, Smuggler's Ghost. 70s and 80s brought the idiot loser stoner, right? Now, do I have a minute to finish?
1 minute.
Okay. Geez, I could sit here for another hour. So, when indica shocks that body, the brain side runs wild. There is no sativa. The brain side runs wild, locks down, your perception of the outside world, gone. You've taken the body side and all the sensation out of it. And the harder you shock those body receptors, the more they are going to hide from you and work less and less and less. And everybody knows, night after night, that indica makes you go to sleep a little less, a little less, a little less. You want to pound that receptor harder, and before you know it, 3 to 4 hours into your sleep cycle, you are waking up, listening to your brain's endocannabinoid system come back online. The brain is going through the sleep cycle, and the endocannabinoid system is going through its 5-6 hour reboot process. The moment your brain tries to get into REM sleep, which is dangerous, you are basically in a coma, the endocannabinoid system stops you. If all you do is sativa all the time, you shock those brain receptors, right? They get down-regulated. The body side starts getting turned up. People that use too much sativa for long periods of time tend to get very short-tempered. They get angry. They don't communicate with themselves well. They don't communicate with other people well. But this idiot loser stoner problem and people not sleeping right with indica, they weren't going to just go start smoking sativa at night. Here, try this hybrid, right? What's it going to do? You don't know. It's a hybrid. It could be anywhere on this genetic spectrum, right? From 1980 to 2000, we got good at growing hybrids. There are growers out there that can recreate, stabilize hybrids. But we stuck to that sativa by day, indica by night thing. Cannabis got stronger and stronger and stronger. Still daytime sativa stuff, but by the end of the 90s, THC really took off. And when we started shocking that brain system a little harder, right, it comes offline and that rabbit wires up faster. And if you don't get up and get moving the body, a good sativa high will crash you in the middle of the day. So when sativa started putting people to sleep in the middle of the day, that's when out west they started saying, well, go use that one at night. If that one made you feel better and sleep in the middle of the day, guess what? Sativa-dominant hybrids started helping people sleep at night. If this thing keeps you awake at night, indica will never save you. Stick to the medical model, right? Go home at night, use indica to run away from your problems so you don't have to think or feel anything. And then during the day, use sativa to fight your lethargy because you don't sleep well enough and you don't exercise and you don't eat right. It's not working. And people are just racking up tolerance and they're just dropping these two hammers back and forth. And we keep kicking this can down the road and we're talking about things that don't even really exist anymore, right? If we look at this like sativa-dominant strains are for manipulating the brain, stop throwing away all the good low THC weed. I love high THC weed too, but the low stuff, slow, low, long-acting, sativa-dominant strains, wherever you want to be on that spectrum, right? The closer you get to pure sativa, the more wide open it is, and the less indica shuts that body system off. What does wide open sativa feel like? You feel that heart rate run. The body feels neurotic, right? It wants to get up and move. A little bit of indica in your sativa-dominant hybrid calms that body side down. The indica.
If I was too much sativa, I would be like Gong Show, Louis.
Yep.
I'm teasing you, but I'm not. Because I know Gene's back there. And
You cut me off?
We got a break
All right.
for lunch.
Sorry, you guys. Important lecture you were going to hear today.
Yeah.